Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. India and the US complete negotiations on a mini trade deal. A final decision is likely in the next 24 to 48 hours. President Trump promises tariff letters to nations starting today. White House delays the deadline for additional tariffs from the 9th of July to the 1st of August. President Trump threatens BRICS nations with an additional 10% tariff as leaders meet in Brazil. Also warns countries aligning with what he calls anti-American policies. BRICS issues a joint statement against trade restrictions without naming the US. Consolidation continues on Dalal Street. The Sensex and the Nifty end flat after a range-bound session. Mid-caps underperform. Days after the crackdown on JaneStreet, market regulator SEBI is upgrading surveillance to curb manipulation in derivatives. As per the SEBI Chief, Pandey, says there may not be many more such cases. Opposition leader Rahul Gandhi asked SEBI why it remained silent for so long. French IT services major Capgemini set to acquire India-based WNS for $3.3 billion as it aims to bolster its artificial intelligence offerings. The combined annual revenue of both companies is more than $23 billion. Defense expenditure as a share of GDP will rise from 1.9% to 2.5% in the next 5 years, says Defense Secretary R.K. Singh. A new contract to develop a medium combat aircraft will be awarded in 3 to 6 months. That's an exclusive. Prime Minister Modi cautions against weaponization of critical minerals at the BRICS summit. A veiled reference to China's curbs on rare earth exports, says critical resources must not be used solely for the interests of any one country. The Supreme Court agrees to hear a clutch of petitions opposing the Election Commission's voter roll verification in Bihar. Nearly 3 crore voters need to produce documents to establish the date and place of their birth. Association for Democratic Reforms claims lakhs of voters could be excluded. President Trump says Elon Musk has gone off the rails, calls him a train wreck. This after Musk's decision to start and bankroll a new political party as a third alternative in the US. Well, the top story this evening, the clock is ticking. A final decision on a mini trade deal between India and the US is likely in the next 24 to 48 hours. Sources say the government has refused to offer any further concessions on sensitive sectors like agriculture and dairy. But we also learned that India has put forward a fair proposal aimed at supporting labor-intensive industries. Now, the average tariff rate under the deal is likely to be around 10%. Meanwhile, the White House has delayed the imposition of the so-called reciprocal tariffs from the 9th of July to the 1st of August. But President Trump has promised to send tariff letters or deal letters to several nations starting today. So far, the US has only signed a trade agreement with the UK. It's also announced a deal with Vietnam. Now, President Trump has threatened the BRICS nations with an additional 10% tariff. Prime Minister Modi, by the way, is currently attending the BRICS summit in Brazil with leaders from Russia, China and South Africa, though President Putin and China's Xi Jinping are not at the summit. Trump said that any country aligning with what he called anti-American policies of the BRICS will face an additional 10% tariff rate. Take a look.
Sending letters out on Monday having to do with the trade deals. It could be 12, maybe 15. You know, Secretary of Commerce right here. And I guess, Howard, I would say it could be maybe as many as 15 or so. And they'll be going out on Monday, and some will go out on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we've made deals also, so we're going to have a combination of letters, and some deals have been made.
But they go into effect on August 1st. Tariffs go into effect August 1st, but the president is setting the rates and the deals right now. Well, the president is right in the midst of discussing all sorts of deals with all sorts of countries, and the gentleman to my right is going to decide, and I'm going to be with him when he makes that decision.
Well, we are trying to create a trading environment and trading arrangements and agreements which will help two-way trade. Our handicrafts, our handlooms, our various agri-products from here will also get a market worldwide. So it's always a benefit on both sides that is being balanced in a free trade agreement. After all, there are lakhs of handloom and handicraft persons here also. So we will be balancing everybody's interests when we are looking at free trade agreement.
Well, that's the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. Parikshit Luthra now with us with more into what the India-US mini-trade deal could entail. Parikshit, the clock is ticking. 9:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time is when we're expecting those letters that President Trump has promised to start going out. And we don't know whether India is going to get a letter with tariffs or a trade deal. But the hope is that a trade deal will be inked. Negotiations are done. For now, that's what your sources are telling you?
Well, our sources tell us that negotiations, of course, are over. There's nothing more to offer. We've drawn our red lines on agriculture. In fact, sources telling us this afternoon as well that agriculture and dairy are very contentious issues in the trade deal and trade talks with the United States and Donald Trump. Will it go through? Will Donald Trump accept India's proposal? That remains to be seen. Sources telling us that we've offered a very good win-win deal, a fair deal, which supports India's MSMEs, our labor-intensive sectors, such as textiles and footwear. This deal, if it goes through, will have certain quotas and certain tariffs, and labor-intensive sectors could be subject to quotas in the US as well and in the US markets. We have made it very clear that we cannot make compromise on our national interests in agriculture and dairy for the interests of our farmers, our religious sensitivities. It remains to be seen what Donald Trump will do now. On the Donald Trump threat for a 10% tariff, additional tariff on countries which are aligned to the anti-American policies of BRICS, sources say that if this happens, it will not be only for one country, it will be across the board for all countries affiliated with BRICS and BRICS partners. Also, they are linking this to the BRICS currency. And Indian government sources telling us that negotiations on the BRICS currency are at very early stages. Nothing is happening immediately. And even if Donald Trump were to impose tariffs, it would possibly happen after the 9th of July. So the next 24 hours are crucial for any deal to happen. The Indian government is saying that let's wait and see, fingers crossed. We've done our work and we've offered whatever we had to. No more room for negotiations. Let's see if both sides agree to the final deal.
Yes, we are waiting. And as I pointed out, perhaps 9:30 p.m. tonight is when we find out more from the US president. Now, India Inc. is hoping for a trade deal with the US, as we were just pointing out. The new president of industry body CII, Rajiv Mamani, says free trade deals cannot please every industry, but he's hoping for a deal with the US before the higher tariffs kick in. Take a look.
I think, FTAs are a negotiation. So I don't think every industry is going to be supremely happy about the FTAs. And in particular, I would say, and as far as EVs are concerned, I think the most important FTA, to be direct, is US. And I do hope that it gets signed on time, because if we talk to the members of CII, they don't want the 25% tariff to kick in on 8th of July or whenever.
Well, all about tariffs. Now, Prime Minister Modi attending the 17th BRICS summit in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. This as US President Donald Trump has warned about a levy of 10% tariffs for countries that align themselves with what he calls anti-American policies of the BRICS. In a joint statement overnight, the BRICS bloc termed the rise of unilateral tariff and non-tariff measures as a serious concern. However, the group refrained from naming US President Donald Trump. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin have not attended the two-day summit in person. Addressing the summit, Prime Minister Modi cautioned against the weaponization of critical minerals in a veiled reference to China amidst Beijing's curbs on rare earth exports. The Prime Minister said that critical resources must not be used solely for the interest of any one country. And on to the day's market action. The market's ending flat after a range-bound session, with the Nifty holding on to levels above 25,400. FMCG companies closing largely in the green, with 4 out of the 6 firms contributing to the Nifty today. So that's the Nifty absolutely flat. Nothing much to speak about for the Nifty Bank or the Sensex. It's the FMCG pack up by almost 1.5% today that was the star performer. Now, just days after the crackdown on JaneStreet, market regulator SEBI is upgrading its surveillance to curb manipulation in the derivatives market. And that is the word in from the SEBI Chief, Tuhin Kantapande, who was speaking at an event at the National Stock Exchange. Now, when asked specifically about JaneStreet, the SEBI Chief said, and I quote, "There may not be more such cases," end of quote. Take a look.
So can you confirm if anybody else will also be investigated about JaneStreet on the allegation?
Please, really.
Any other entities?
नहीं वो तो I've said yesterday also I've said that we are watching it as basically surveillance issue and obviously surveillance at both at the exchange level and SEBI level will continue and will also we will also upgrade those surveillance measures and I don't think there are very many other risks which you are posing.
Well, that's the SEBI chief. Meanwhile, the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha, Rahul Gandhi, has questioned SEBI over the JaneStreet order. Citing his statement about retail investors losing money in the F&O market, Rahul Gandhi said, and I quote, "I had clearly said in 2024 that the F&O market had become a game of big players and small investors are being continuously fleeced." Now, SEBI itself is admitting that JaneStreet committed manipulation of thousands of crores. Why did SEBI remain silent for so long? At whose behest did the Modi government turn a blind eye? And how many big sharks are still shorting retail investors, end of quote. Now, day one of Travel Food Services IPO saw a 10% subscription as of 4 p.m. Retail investors' portion has been subscribed 13%, followed by qualified institutional buyer subscription, which is at 7%. The company's IPO is entirely an offer for sale of shares worth 2,000 crore rupees by the promoter. The company operates travel, quick service restaurants and lounge businesses across airports in India and Malaysia. Jio BlackRock Asset Management has raised nearly 18,000 crore rupees in its debut new fund offer. The three-day NFO included 3 open-ended debt schemes, liquid money market and overnight fund. The offering saw participation from over 90 institutional investors and 67,000 retail investors. With this, Jio BlackRock ranks amongst the top 15 AMCs in India by debt assets under management. So that's the latest on the NFO from Jio BlackRock. On to a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Defence Secretary R.K. Singh has said that the defence expenditure as a share of GDP will rise from 1.9% to 2.5% in the next 5 years. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, Singh also said that a new contract to develop a medium combat aircraft will be awarded in the next 3 to 6 months. Take a look.
For the 5-year cycle of the 16th Finance Commission, we are going to be seeking additional allocation to the extent that our defense share in the GDP goes up from the current figure of about 1.9 to about 2.5. But that is a sort of broader, longer term or rather medium term sort of request that we intend to make.
Indian military attaché in Indonesia had indicated we lost fighters in the conflict with Pakistan in the initial phase. The Indian military attaché in Indonesia went on to say that there was a decision not to strike Pakistan's air defences, as this was not an operation against the Pak army but only against terrorists. Would you confirm that, and also how many fighters we may have lost in that exercise, because there have been inferences about Rafale fighters being lost?
Of course, I'm not going to talk about individual platforms, and you use Rafales in the plural. I can assure you that that's absolutely not correct. This business of counting our losses is an absurdity. I don't see the Pakistanis counting their losses and blasting it over the airwaves.
Well, that's Defence Secretary. In a bid to bolster its artificial intelligence offerings, French IT services major Capgemini will acquire India-based WNS for $3.3 billion. Rima is standing by with the details. Rima, big deal in the IT space. Take us to the contours and how this is likely to benefit Capgemini.
Thanks so much for that. This is indeed the big deal in the global BPO space, a segment which is getting rapidly disrupted on the back of AI. You spoke about the combined weight, the behemoth of Capgemini and WNS, but also this acquisition for Capgemini is going to be operating margin leverage. Let's just quickly break up the numbers. So WNS's revenues last year were about 1.2 billion euros. Capgemini was at 22.1 billion euros. So combined, we're looking at a company with a top line of 23.3 billion euros with operating margins of 13.6%. But this acquisition, as I said, will also boost Capgemini's EPS. So just immediately, EPS goes up by 4%. But when you account for the revenue synergies and the cost synergies, then the EPS benefit will be to the tune of 7% by 2027. So the revenue synergies are estimated to be about 100 to 140 million pounds, while the cost synergies are anticipated to be about 50 to 70 million pounds. UBS had written a note in May, on the 2nd of May, that's last month, because there was a lot of speculation about whether Capgemini will acquire WNS. And they're saying that while AI poses a structural headwind to much of the BPO landscape, WNS enjoys vertical process experience. If Capgemini manages to leverage its technology to drive automation, it could emerge as the successful provider in next-gen BPO. So basically, what WNS brings to the table is vertical depth across many key industries. They've got long-term contracts, recurring revenue growth. They've enjoyed about a 9% kind of a revenue growth over the last 3 fiscal years. So basically, it's a blend of WNS's domain-rich BPO capabilities with Capgemini's AI-led automation. And the question is, when you bring the two together, can this be a defining moment for Capgemini?
All right, Rima, many thanks for joining us. That's the latest Capgemini to buy WNS. Setback for Turkey-based SEBI Aviation. The Delhi High Court has dismissed the company's plea challenging the revocation of its security clearance. Remember, the Indian government had revoked the company's security clearance of handling ground and cargo operations after Operation Sindoor. We will head into a short break, but up next, the Supreme Court agrees to hear a clutch of petitions opposing the Election Commission's voter roll verification in Bihar. That and more when we return. You're watching Business 360. A quick check of some of the other headlines. Torrential rainfall has killed at least 78 people in Himachal Pradesh. The Met Department has forecast very heavy rains with thunderstorm and lightning across the state. The Chief Minister Sukhu said the state has incurred losses of up to 700 crore rupees. Rescue and relief operations are currently ongoing. Over 80 people, including 28 children, have died in flash floods in central Texas. Rescue operations are underway and dozens are still missing. Authorities indicate that the death toll is expected to rise. The unexpected flash floods were triggered by torrential rain, along with the Guadalupe River, which rose 26 feet in just 45 minutes. President Trump has said he will probably visit the state on Friday. Israel has said that its army launched strikes on 3 ports and a power plant in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen. The Israeli Air Force said the latest strikes on Yemen's ports were in response to the Houthi rebels' repeated attacks on Israel and its citizens. Israel's army has also intensified airstrikes across Gaza City, killing at least 14 people today alone. President Trump will host Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu in Washington, D.C. The president has said the meeting will include talks on a permanent deal with Iran. This comes as Israel and Hamas resumed indirect talks on a ceasefire in Gaza after months of heavy Israeli military action. The Israel Prime Minister said that talks could help finalize a Gaza ceasefire and secure the release of hostages. Ukraine has withdrawn from the Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel mines, citing urgent military needs amidst grinding war with Russia. Kyiv made the move as it struggles to secure U.S. military aid and frontline troops. Ukrainian commanders and analysts say the mines could help slow Russian advance, especially as Moscow reportedly uses them extensively. Russia is not a party to the treaty and denies deploying such weapons. President Trump has said that Elon Musk has gone off the rails. This after the tech billionaire said that he will start and bankroll a new political party. In a post on Truth Social, the U.S. leader also called the Tesla chief a train wreck for suggesting that a third alternative political party in the U.S. is possible.
US President Donald Trump had a biting response Sunday to billionaire Elon Musk's move to start a new US political party.
I think it's ridiculous to start a third party. We have a tremendous success with the Republican Party. The Democrats have lost their way, but it's always been a two-party system. So he can have fun with it, but I think it's ridiculous.
It's the latest in the widening rift between the world's most powerful man and its richest that began last month, when Musk started attacking the item at the top of Trump's legislative agenda, a sweeping tax cut and spending bill. That bill was signed into law on Independence Day.
Take over, Elon, just take over.
Musk spent millions of dollars underwriting Trump's 2024 re-election effort and had spearheaded the downsizing agency Doge, but stepped back in May. Around that time, he said Trump's bill would bankrupt the country, and called it a disgusting abomination. Critics say the bill will significantly add to the US debt load and damage the US economy. As their feud escalated, the president threatened to pull billions of dollars that Tesla and SpaceX receive in government contracts and subsidies. There were signs in mid-June Musk was trying to repair his relationship with Trump. Musk posted on X that he had gone too far. But last week, Musk began criticizing Trump's bill again and vowed that in next year's midterms, he would unseat lawmakers who supported it. Then on Saturday, he said he would establish the America Party. A day later, Trump posted that he was saddened to watch Musk go completely off the rails and be a train wreck the past 5 weeks. Meanwhile, investment firm Azoria Partners said on Saturday it will postpone the listing of Tesla ETF, which was set to launch this week. It raised concerns Musk creating a political party posed a conflict with his full-time responsibilities as Tesla CEO. Azoria CEO James Fishback also reiterated his own support for Trump on social media and encouraged the Tesla board to meet immediately to ask Elon to, quote, clarify his political ambitions.
Well, the United Arab Emirates has introduced a nomination-based golden visa for Indian citizens, offering lifetime residency for a one-time fee of approximately 23 lakh rupees. Earlier, pathways required a minimum investment of 5 crore rupees in real estate or a business commitment. Shivani standing by with more. Shivani, now a golden visa for the UAE for all of 23 lakhs?
Well, yes, the UAE has rolled out the refreshed Golden Visa scheme for Indians, slashing costs and widening eligibility in a move that builds on the India-UAE Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or the CEPA. Now, signed in 2022, CEPA aims to deepen trade, investment and mobility between the two countries. And this latest Golden Visa reform is a big step in that direction. Indians can now apply for lifetime UAE residency by paying a one-time fee of 1 lakh dirhams, roughly around 23.3 lakh Indian rupees, without needing to buy any property or start a business, which were mandatory under the earlier route. This is a major shift from the existing criteria that demanded around 2 million dirhams, which is around 4.6 crore plus, in property or business investments to qualify for the Golden Visa. This time, the visa has been opened up beyond high net worth investors and individuals, now available to professionals like teachers, nurses, scientists, digital creators, e-sport players as well too, rather than just HNIs and business owners. Applications can be filed directly from India through designated centers or online portals, and candidates will be assessed on professional credentials, clean background and potential contribution to the UAE's economy and culture. Now, experts believe that over 5,000 Indians are expected to apply in just the first 3 months, which is the pilot phase, with more than 4 million Indians already living in UAE. This opens new pathways for tax-free income, business opportunities and full family sponsorship as well, including children, parents and domestic staff. Back to you.
Shivani, many thanks. The Election Commission's electoral roll revision drive in Bihar ahead of state polls has triggered a controversy. RJD MP Manoj Jha, TMC MP Mahua Moitra and NGOs have moved the Supreme Court against this, alleging that it may disenfranchise close to 3 crore voters. The court has agreed to hear the matter on Thursday. Ashmit joins us now with more. Ashmit, please allege that this special intensive revision by the Election Commission in Bihar is impractical and unreasonable. What is the basis of the plea that's been filed?
Well, the Supreme Court agreeing to hear a batch of applications filed by political parties like the RJD, the TMC, by NGOs like the Association for Democratic Reforms. The core concern that they've raised is the constitutionality of the special intensive revision order that has been passed by the Election Commission for verification of electoral rolls. Now, bear in mind, this SIR exercise has been done previously as well, now being announced. The concern that has been raised is the intensive manner in which it is being done under very compressed timelines. The Bihar elections are not very far away. The petitioner's estimates is due to be held in November of 2025, later this year. And therefore, this window makes it very, very likely that there are lakhs and crores of people who are likely to be disenfranchised and their right to vote is likely to be taken away. The figure that this petition puts forth is that as many as 3 crore workers who are working out of the state of Bihar could possibly get affected due to this SIR order. Now, under this SIR order, there is a requirement for people to go to the booth level officer and then subsequently establish their citizenship by proving their date and place of birth, and not only themselves but also their parents. Now, this is something which is argued to be arbitrary, to be unconstitutional, to be violative of multiple rights. The petition essentially argues is that this will unduly affect, disproportionately affect the marginalized and the poor community, that there are lakhs and crores that could get affected. In fact, just this morning, we had senior advocates Kapil Sibal as well as Abhishek Manu Singhvi address these concerns before the Apex Court. The Supreme Court, for now, not passing any orders, not issuing notice, but nonetheless has agreed to hear this case. The Apex Court will take up this case on July 10th.
Ashmit Penny, thanks for joining us. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue here on CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment with more.